What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the Season 2, Episode 13 review of The Walking Dead entitled Beside the Dying Fire. Wow. Wow. I mean, goodness gracious, man. Woo. Damn, is this series exciting as all hell, man. I mean, I have not been as excited to watch a TV show, I don't know, since maybe 24 went off the air. I mean, this show is just wow. Wow. I mean, this is one of the few instances in TV history where the horror genre has actually been used effectively. Just blew my mind. That season finale was everything I expected and some. Everything I hoped for and some. Wow. Pure action, pure pandemonium with some philosophy and psychology mixed in there. Wow. Wow. 10 out of 10 for this episode, definitely. But before I go any further, let me just say, obviously, season finale, there will be spoilers, so spoiler alert. For those of you who have not yet watched the season finale of The Walking Dead, it would be best if you watched the episode first and then came back to this review because there will be spoilers throughout this review. Holy shit, man. Also, next Monday, I'll be doing my season 2 recap. So on next Monday at this time, I'll be giving you my season 2 review and recap, give you my predictions, speculations, things I liked about this season, things I didn't like about this season. So that's coming out next week. And let me just say this before I jump in this. I would have killed myself. Rather than go through this what these people are going through right now, I would have just killed myself at the CDC along with Dr. Jenner. Now, I don't know about you guys. That's just how I feel about this. Because, I mean, the type of stuff they're going through is just, damn. Damn. So first I'm going to give you a summary and then with some analysis thrown in there. And then at the end of that, I'll give you my full analysis of the things that happened in this episode. I partially have to do that because there's not really much analysis. For the first 20 minutes of this episode, just pure zombie action and horror. Pure zombie action and horror. And these zombies are not even, the intelligent zombies. They're pretty dumb. They can't even, they're so dumb they can't even climb over a fence. And yet they still are just absolutely frightening. Wow. So the episode begins with a flashback, but it's a flashback of the zombies. So it starts in the past with, a horde of zombies who see a helicopter and they decide to follow the sound of the helicopter. And as they follow the helicopter, the horde gets bigger and bigger and bigger and we follow them throughout this flashback until we get up until the present timeline, until we get to the present moment in the story. And so at the end of the last episode, when the camera pans out and you see all those zombies, we actually get the origin story, a backstory for that horde of zombies. And it basically shows the journey of how the zombies got to Herschel's barn. And so in the current timeline, we see them following, Rick and Carl. We get, their backstory all the way up to the point where they start following Rick and Carl. And I've never seen this type of technique before, at least in a horror flick. Not really, not this type of narrative technique that gives you a sort of flashback like this in order. And it works wonderfully. Works from an aesthetic standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, it's just beautiful. I mean, a technique that's solely designed to produce suspense in the watcher. I mean, beautiful, beautiful writing. Every aspect of this, just even the construction of the narrative. And I don't know if they adapted that from the comic books or not, but if they did, awesome. Even if they didn't, awesome. Great, great, great writing from these guys. So then, Rick and Carl are coming back from the clearing, given the aftermath of the last episode of what happened to Shane. And then they stop. I forget why they stopped, but they did stop. And all of a sudden they hear like the zombies, and they look around and they are surrounded by, I mean, the biggest horde of zombies that we've seen on this show. I think that we've seen on this show. And one thing I question about this is how exactly did they get surrounded? Because they were in front of the zombies. I thought they were in front of the zombies, but then as the camera pans out, you see that it's basically an omnidirectional attack. I mean, the horde is closing in from just about every angle. I mean, just crazy, crazy. So Rick and Carl, run towards the barn. They run in the barn, sort of, blockade the door so that the zombies can't get in. And Rick has this plan of how to get out of this barn, which is basically surrounded by zombies. And he takes a can full of gasoline, pours the gasoline out, and then he tells Carl to get up on the rafters of the barn, and he gives him the instructions of take this lighter and throw it down when I tell you to throw it down. And then so Rick, not Rick, but Carl gets up on the rafters of the barn, and then Rick opens the door, removes the blockade, opens the door. The zombies kind of pour into the barn, and he's egging them on, backing up. And then they get to the spot where they're right on top of the gasoline, and he quickly climbs up on the rafters with Carl, and tells him to drop the lighter, and the whole barn just goes up in a blaze. All the zombies just go up in the blaze. And so the idea is, just to burn the zombies to death. And after this, there's like, a cut scene inside the house. And one thing that really irked me about this cut scene was that they're up and nobody notices that Carl is going. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, I understand, that, Carl has, an important function in terms of a plot device, but Jesus Christ. I mean, Lori seems to be negligent to the point of just being retarded. I mean, is she brain dead? I mean, all of these people are up and nobody notices that he slipped out of the house. I mean, how could they have all been up and not have noticed that Carl managed to get out of the house? How did he even get out of the house? How did he even get by them? That's what I really don't understand. But anyway, so everybody's in the house, and I think Daryl went onto the porch and he sees the zombies and he's like, oh shit. So everybody runs to the porch. They notice what's going on. They see the barn burning, and they run out with guns blazing. They hop in the cars, load up the shotguns, the handguns, the rifles. I mean, they come out with guns blazing. I mean, and they're just shooting. Shooting shot after shot after shot, and it looks like the zombie horde is just not abating. I mean, they have to fire off at least 100 or so rounds, and the zombie horde is still coming. It's still coming. I must say this though, they're the best group of marksmen I've ever seen, because they are one-shotting these zombies. I mean, one shot to the head, done. Just straight dropping them. And then Jimmy, Herschel's adopted son, or I forget if it's his biological son or adopted son, but he hops into the RV and he goes to where Rick and Carl are, on top of the barn that's now, caught on fire. And so, he drives the RV into the back so that, Rick and Carl can, hop on top of the RV so he can save them from the zombies inside, as well as the burning barn. And this dummy, Jimmy, oh man, is this guy a retard. So he leaves the driver's seat and walks back into the RV, and I don't know why he walked back. Maybe he thought that Rick and Carl were gonna drop through the ceiling or something. I don't know, but he forgot to lock the door, and as soon as he walks back into the RV, they flood into the RV, jump on him, bite his leg, bite his neck. I mean, biting his thigh off. I mean, goodness gracious, he's immediately overrun by zombies. So all the people who are, decide, not to go out with the guns blazing, people who are not fighters, Lori, Otis's wife, the little girl, they were, back at the house. They decide to run out the back of the house. to, get away from the zombie horde. I mean, Herschel is shooting. Herschel, decides to stand his ground, and he's shooting zombies to keep them away from the house. But I mean, they're just coming from every single direction. It looks like. So, like I said, they run out the back of the house, and almost immediately, Otis's wife gets got. I mean, almost immediately she gets got. Zombies just jump right on her. I mean, goodness great. I mean, this episode was just so suspenseful, so horrific, so much action. I mean, she just gets got immediately. They jump right on her. And then, T-Dog and Andrea come in the pickup truck, and they come to, pick everybody up so they can, hurry up and get out of there. And Andrea hops out the car. Maybe she did that to provide cover for them. I don't know. But somehow Carol and Andrea wind up getting left behind. They left them behind. I mean, wow. And then Lori, the main one, well, we can't wait for them. We can't wait for them. And then T-Dog takes off and just leaves them there. Goodness gracious. So the group gets split up into all these multiple factions because they're basically run off the barn. Andrea runs into the woods. Daryl picks up Carol on his motorcycle. Carol found a way to, get away and find Daryl. Glenn and Maggie are inside. I don't know what kind of car that is, but they get out. And then it's T-Dog, Lori, and the little girl. So they basically get split. They go in all different directions. The group is broken up into factions. And Rick and Herschel, they make their way, to the highway. They were able to get away. And if you remember, this is the highway where they were before Sophia disappeared. In fact, there's still the car there with the sign on it that says Sophia stay here. So that's where they wind up. And Rick and Herschel get into this interesting discussion about, religion and God. And Herschel doesn't believe that his daughters have made it. Doesn't believe that his daughters have made it. And he's sort of, is losing hope, losing his optimism. And Rick says, you're a man of God, have some faith. And then Herschel says, and this is just, the ultimate, viewpoint on sort of God and, nihilism and, the Nietzschean sense that, God is dead. He says, I can't profess to understand God's plan, but Christ promised the resurrection of the dead. I just thought he had something a little different in mind. And my first response was to just laugh. I mean, wow, talk about irony. Talk about a biblical sense of irony. And my thoughts on this is basically this. If God can't save you from a zombie apocalypse, if God can't save you from this type of situation, then there's either one or two things. Either there is no God, God simply does not exist, or if God does exist, he's unethical. I mean, he has to be unethical. I mean, if God is omnipotent and if God is ethical, then it seems to be the case that God ought to save these people from this zombie apocalypse, to save them from this sort of tragedy. I mean, from where I stand, if you have the power to do good, and you can do good with little or no cost to yourself, then it seems to me you're morally obligated to do good. You have the power to do good. You can exercise that power with no cost to yourself. And you can if you can do good, then it seems that you're morally obligated to do good. And if God exists in this situation, then God must be unjust and he must be unethical, because I can't imagine what these people would have done to have deserved this type of treatment, to be placed in the middle of a zombie apocalypse without being saved, without any sort of redemption. I mean, it's just beyond me. And this sort of, discussion between Herschel and Rick seems to me to be symbolic of, the group's eventual slip into nihilism, which is, basically what happens towards the end of the episode. But as, Rick and Carl and Herschel are, on the highway isn't safe. I mean, there are still walkers, straggling along the highway. And Herschel, tells Rick, your main priority at this point is to, get away from this highway because you have to protect Carl. Carl has to be your primary focus, and you have to keep Carl alive. So he's trying to convince Rick to not wait at the highway for the other members of the group, and to get away. And this was very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Rick was about to leave the highway without Lori. I mean, Herschel and Rick decided to go to the highway because they figured this is a meeting point. This is a meeting point that everybody would think to come back to. And Rick was about to leave Lori, his pregnant wife. I mean, he was about to leave his pregnant wife behind. Honestly, and I've said this, all along. There is something wrong with Rick's calculus when it comes to making ethical decisions. He stays behind. I mean, in the past, even as far back as season 1, he stayed behind to save less important people. Remember Merle, the racist, who beat the shit out of T-Dog and who beat the shit out of Rick? He went back to save him. Remember Randall, the guy who tried to jump off the top of a building and got his leg impaled on a gate? The same Randall who tried to kill him? He stayed behind to save Randall. Remember Shane? Yes, Shane. Remember Shane trapped on that yellow cheese bus about to be killed by all those zombies? He went back to save Shane. But he won't stay behind to save his pregnant wife? Come on now. Come on now, Rick. But then, just as he's about to make the decision to leave Lori, everybody, shows up. Maggie shows up. Glenn shows up. T-Dog, Lori, the little girl, and, Carol, and Daryl. They all show up. And, so everybody's found their way back to the highway. And at this point, it looks like the death toll's looking like this. Jimmy, Herschel's son, dead. Otis's wife, dead. And Andrea is missing at this point. Andrea is missing. We don't know what's happening to Andrea. And then as they're driving along the highway, leaving the farm, way, way behind, hopefully never to be seen ever again. There was a point at which people were saying, are you going to go back to save Andrea? And Rick is not even going to go back to save Andrea. Woman who put her life on the line to go to look for Sophia. Put her life on the line to go out there and fight against these zombies. And he's not going to go save Andrea? Wow. Like I said, we went back to save less important people. People who should not have been saved. But he's not going back to save Andrea? Man. So they all start, like I said, driving away from the farm. But it's very, very interesting. And this is why I think, the writing in The Walking Dead is just a step above everybody else. There's a camera shot of the car and the note on the car that was left for Sophia that says, so Sophia, stay here. And just a direct over the top overhead, camera shot. And it really brings us back to a point of, the symbolism that Sophia, the symbolism that Sophia represented. And from where I stand, it represents, nihilism. I mean, this world is completely overrun. They're calling, they're talking about having faith. God isn't coming to save them. Complete transition into nihilism. And I think this is the sort of final break. Hopefully, this is the final break with their delusions about civilization. Final break with their ethical principles and the real loss of their humanity. I mean, here these guys were. They were on a farm. They had some sense of safety, security, solace from this zombie apocalypse. They thought they were going to be able to make a new life for themselves, and bam, crushed, absolutely crushed. And in the process, they've had to sacrifice. I mean, each one of them has had to sacrifice a component of their humanity. And right now, it seems like these people are going to have to, start worshiping at the altar of, nihilism, because that's where I see this going. That's where I really see this going. I mean, that overhead camera shot of that message to Sophia, and Sophia eventually not being saved. Huge dose of nihilism and huge dose of realism. So they leave. So they're on the highway. They're driving away from the farm. But they run out of gas. Who would have thunk it? They run out of gas, so they have to camp out at this sort of stone structure or stone edifice. And this is when the shit hits the fan. This is when the shit really starts hitting the fan. You'd think that being in the middle of a zombie apocalypse would be bad enough. No. So it seems as if we finally get the revelation of what Jenner told Rick. And this is something that you guys have, if you've seen the last couple of episodes of The Walking Dead, then this is something you've probably have figured out for yourself. So Rick finally tells the group what Dr. Jenner told him in season 1, which is this. And shit goes from bad to worse to worser. And I don't think worser is a word, but if it was, it'd be the perfect word to describe this situation. Rick tells them that everyone's infected. Everyone's infected, and it doesn't matter how they die. They will be reanimated as a walker, as a zombie. And everybody's like, what the hell? We're all infected, and you didn't tell us about this? Wow. Wow. And of course, Rick's, sort of authority takes a huge hit here. And think about how horrible that is. To know that you've been infected with some sort of virus that when you die, you will be reanimated as a zombie. Think about how horrific that is. Think about how Lori and Rick must feel about Carl. If when Carl dies, he'll be reanimated as a walker, as a zombie. And we don't even know how, Lori's going to be affected by this because she's pregnant. If she's infected with the virus, does that now mean the baby's also infected with the virus? Oh my gosh. Could you, I don't want to get too morbid here, but imagine if the baby was stillborn, but then reanimated as a zombie. Oh God, that'd be so horrible. I don't think the writers are gonna take it there, but shit, man. As bad as things have gotten, I guess that's a possibility. And so, of course, everybody's horrified by this revelation. And Rick's still saying we can remake civilization. We can have something that looks like civilization. We can still be civilized. We can make a life for each other. And as my teacher used to say, Rick is dwelling in baseless optimism. baseless optimism. And you can just see it in Rick's demeanor because he's never been like this. He's always been, cool, calm, collective, always had his head together. But you can really see the psychological strain in Rick. He's really, really psychologically torn. And I don't know how these guys are able to sustain themselves psychologically, to keep going, to wake up knowing every morning that they are in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and at any morning and at any minute they can be just overrun by a horde of zombies. And then on top of this, while they're in the middle of this, so it's the middle of the night, they're at this stone edifice or stone structure. They hear something in the middle of the night. And everyone, they hear a noise. So everyone starts panicking. And, some people want to stay at this stone structure. And others want to leave this stone structure because they're, scared that the zombies are out there somewhere in the forest and are, coming to them and coming to get them. And Rick, tries to tell them, listen, man, it's not a good idea. It's the middle of the night. We're in the middle of a forest. You shouldn't run out there by yourselves. Don't panic. There's no food. There's no water. There's no ammo. There's no gas for the cars. And still, people are so psychologically terrified, so traumatized that they're still not convinced. And finally, Rick has to turn gangster. Rick just turns gangster and he says, you want to leave? You want to run out there in the middle of the night, in the middle of the forest, with no ammo, no cars, with nothing? You think that there's something better out there for you than me, being the leader of this group, who's had to sacrifice my best friend, who's had to kill my best friend for this group? You really think you'll find something out there better than me? Then fine, run away, go out there and send me a postcard. Woo, boy, man. Wow. And then Rick tops it all off. He says, this isn't a democracy anymore. This isn't a democracy anymore. Wow. Woo, man! I'm telling you, Rick is starting to get heavy-handed, and it started in that bar when he had to shoot, Tony and the other dude, and now we just see, Rick. Wow, I'm really, really excited to see in the next season where they take Rick's psychological development, because I mean, wow, this isn't a democracy anymore. Wow. So throughout the season, we've seen, and within the last, couple of episodes, we've seen two important psychological and ethical turning points. The first was Sophia's death, and the second was Shane's death. And the reason why I say Shane's death was an important turning point was not so much for the group, but for Rick himself. Because when Rick divulges to the group, how he, killed Shane and how he wanted to kill Shane and he did it on behalf of the group, everybody looks at him like, wow. Wow, his authority and credibility really took a hit with that. And you can see how it's just weighing, how the fact that he killed Shane is weighing on him psychologically. Wow. Wow. I know I haven't mentioned Andrea again throughout this episode, but if you want to see what happens to Andrea, whether she lives or dies, then go and watch the episode. Also, like I said before, remember I'll be doing a Walking Dead season 2 recap, and sort of recap slash season review slash predictions, speculations, and everything like that, because I haven't read the comic book series, so I don't know anything about this series other than what I've seen from the television series. So make sure you tune in for that. That will be out next week, Monday, early Monday morning as usual. And also, it looks like season 3 might be even better. Ooh, I know coming from me that might be hard to believe, but yes, looks like season 3 is going to get real crazy, because at the end of the episode the camera pans out, and there's a section, there's like a sort of like a river or a lake, and then across from the river or lake there's some more forest, but right after that there's this huge prison. Wow. Wow, so that looks like some sort of foreshadowing where it looks like these guys might wind up in a prison. Ooh, man, like I said, I have not been this excited by a TV show in a while, man. In a long, long time, since like 24 went off the air. So, man, I can't wait for season 3 to come out, man. I can't wait for season 3. So, this is your boy, Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.